Well, this year has certainly been a year that none of us expected. It's been a time when the inhumanity of our culture has been exposed on multiple fronts. By the intensified struggle for racial justice in response to shocking manifestations of systemic violence and oppression, by a pandemic that has wreaked havoc on our physical and economic health, and especially on the well-being of the most marginalized among us, and by the perpetuation of an us and them culture by our nation's political system. And in the midst of this relentless turmoil, our trans and gender nonconforming community continues to be amongst the hardest hit demographic. Barriers to employment, equitable health care, affordable housing, and other basic human rights continue to disproportionately affect TGNC Americans. An even more sobering reality is the number of TGNC lives that have been lost to violence and hatred at the hands of a culture that insists that we don't deserve to exist, with the majority of these victims being our Black trans sisters. In 2020 alone, a record 32 TGNC Americans have lost their lives just for being who they are. And all of us know that this number is likely even higher since many murdered trans people are often misgendered by the police and their deaths are misreported in the media. If we've learned anything this year, it is that we cannot separate racial justice from gender diversity justice. The multiple intersections that exist in our community irrefutably contribute to the degree of violence and discrimination experienced by our TGNC siblings. And if we do not understand the implications that these layers of intersections have for those who are most marginalized in our community, then we will continue to perpetuate the barriers that put our most vulnerable siblings at risk. So what can be done? The first thing that those of us who are white can do is we can acknowledge our privilege. We must recognize that while we may share similar life experiences to that of our TG and siblings of color, that there are unearned, inherent advantages to being white. As a white TGNC individual or ally, we need to acknowledge that we are a part of the systemic racial injustice that permeates our culture. So our responsibility is to listen, learn, and act as advocates. A second thing that each of us participating in this event can do is elevate marginalized voices. We can invite those individuals who are the most affected by systemic injustice to have a seat at the table. All of these voices and perspectives need to be heard, acknowledged, and valued as a part of the solution. And finally, we must show up for our TGNC siblings of color. We must use our financial means to advocate and advance for programs and institutions working to meet their needs. We must join together in peaceful protests, showing our solidarity for systemic change and lasting justice. We must transform the landscape of our workplaces in order to achieve equitable employment and opportunities for advancement. We must embody the truth that until all of us are free, none of us are free. So on this 2020 Transgender Day of Remembrance, I ask you, what is one thing that you will do to show up for our community? What is one action that you will take to memorialize those who have lost their lives and to support the most marginalized in our community? Please know that your commitment to this action could literally save the life of a TGNC individual. Thank you.